Hello everyone, my name is Matías Matamala from the Oxford Robotics Institute, and I will present my work entitled Learning Camera Performance Models for Active Multi-Camera VT&R Therapy. We're interested in using legged robots because they are a flexible platform that can be used in different challenging environments. We're also interested in VT&R therapy approaches because they allow us to deploy robots easily just using cameras. However, in order to use VT&R therapy with legged robots, we notice there are some very important challenges. First of all, if we want to make the robots go through industrial environments that can be very cluttered, they need to be able to work not only walking forward as is usually in wheel robots, but they need to be able to work omni-directionally as is expected for these platforms. And also, because of the gait that this robot have, they can make perception challenging because the camera can be very shaky, and also sometimes it's very easy to lose lose the sight of the object that we have in front, as you can see in the circuits in the video. In this work, we're aiming to solve some of these issues by presenting an active multi-camera VT&R therapy system that basically first allows us to use multiple unsynchronized cameras, so we can just use many cameras that can be placed on the robot, and we can just use all of them without any kind of hard synchronization. Secondly, we present a way to learn different performance models of such cameras, so we can always prioritize one of the cameras during deployment, and also it allows us to actively switch the camera when one of the cameras is not performing as it's supposed to be. And lastly, we show how the system can be deployed in real-world scenarios, and we present two different experiments in which the robot is doing VT&R therapy in these different environments. So let's go to the approach. First, in normal VT&R therapy system, we have that the robot is teleoperated to go from point A to point B, and the output of this process is basically a topometric map that the robot uses afterwards to follow and to repeat the same trajectories again and again. In our system, we consider that the robot can have different cameras as the front and the rear camera that you can see on the picture. So in our case, both cameras are used during the teach step. So we are not, in this case, we are not only building the map, but we're also collecting the performance samples of each camera, as you can see here. So when the robot is teleoperated to go from between these 2 points, the robot is collecting these different samples that you can see with different colors in the image. The question is now how these samples are collected. So in order to do so, we rely on the underlying theory of the visual estimation process. So if we can think of it as the usual cost that we optimize in order to obtain the pose, that it can be also interpreted as a factor graph, as you can see here, we can just use the feature information matrix of this system in order to record an estimate of the covariance. So by using this covariance, we can compute the negative entropy, that is a single scalar that we can use as a metric of performance, because the larger the negative entropy, the better the camera is performing, and the other way around. So we can just use this single number to decide if one camera is doing well or not. So another challenge that exists, however, is that when we collect these samples, they are spread across the whole trajectory. So in order to avoid this issue, what we do is that we learn models that are assigned to the keyframes instead. In this way, we can just avoid having the information indexed by distance, but instead associated to discrete keyframes. So in order to learn the model, what we do is we apply an RBF kernel, a radial basis function, and we try to collapse all the information around a keyframe in order to create a single model that is represented by a mean and a variance that basically represent what is expected performance for this specific keyframe. We repeat the process for all the keyframes in the whole trajectory, as you can see here, and in this way we obtain these profiles that we call CPMs, or camera performance models, that we use as a model that explains how the robot should use each camera across the whole trajectory. Let's see how they are used. So if the robot is starting in this position on the left, you will see that the keyframe that should be using as a reference to localize should be the one corresponding to the front camera, because that's the camera that should have the best performance for that specific part. So when the robot is traversing that area, in general, it will stay using the front camera, but when it is going through the middle area of this path, you will see that the robot will switch to the rear camera because the performance of the camera is supposed to be better for this specific part. So when the robot is reaching the end of the trajectory in this case, the robot will switch back to the other camera. An interesting thing as well is that we use the same strategy to deal with some unexpected situations. For example, let's assume the same path as before, and now we will show like more details about how this thing is working in practice. So you see like this horizontal line that is indicating what is the actual negative entropy that the robot is computing for this specific location. So you can see that first the robot is using the front camera, so it's like walking a bit, like it keeps using the same camera because the performance is like doing pretty well. But then if an object appears like in front of the road, let's say a person was crossing, like effectively occluding the camera, the performance is going to drop, as you can see on the plot at the bottom. So when the performance drops, we then use this to trigger a switch in the camera. So the robot is going to switch to the rear camera, and while the performance should be slightly worse than the other one, it's still good enough in order to keep the robot on track. So when the object now is gone, we can just go back and keep the same behavior as before and effectively finish the whole trajectory, keep staying on track. A last remark that we need to say about our system is that about the integration with the quadruped, that is something novel as well, because in this case we are relying on position commands that are like generated in the whole trajectory. So we just send the next target to a high-level motion controller, then computes 2D twist that is sent to the whole body controller to generate the walking commands. For the experimental evaluation, we mainly computed the path trajectory error, that is basically the mean square error of the teach and repeat paths. And we also had like some ground truth trajectories that we generated from ICP registration using LiDAR maps that they were not used for localization in a virtual repeat system, but just for these visualization purposes. In our first experiment, we teleoperated the robot to go through in a lab indoor environment. It was a 50-meter path, and the robot was able to track and to repeat the trajectory 5 times. So in this case, the robot walked forward and also backward, and the robot, it was just like no difference for the robot to repeat the trajectory in this case. Here we can see some examples of the trajectories that we obtained compared with the real map. So for this we use the LiDAR localization to generate these plots. So you can see that the trajectories are quite close, so showing that the good performance of the system to track the trajectory. And in terms of the metrics, we achieve around 7 centimeters of this path tracking error in average when we compare the teach and repeat trajectories. Then for a second experiment, we teleoperated the robot to go through industrial environment. That it was more challenging because of the different conditions, and the trajectory was way longer, it was 45 meters. So the robot managed to traverse the whole trajectory 4 times, even when we forced some occlusions by just walking in front or back of the robot in order to force the switch, as you can see on the video. So you can also observe in the video how the performance is like changing over time, because we are showing here in this video as well the camera performance models in order to illustrate how the robot is switching the camera. So in the same way as before, here we show some of the trajectories that we obtained, and in general the robot managed to track the trajectory even walking back and forth. But however, in this case, the robot achieved 11 centimeters error on average for the path tracking error, which was like which was quite accurate considering like the trajectory was quite longer. However, we also reported some failures that I want to illustrate in the next slide. Here you can observe that the robot was trying to repeat the same trajectory, but it was like performed at a different time the same day. So the problem was that the robot struggled to localize because the visual appearance of both images was quite different, as you can see at the bottom. So in this way, the estimate of the robot was quite off the actual trajectory, producing eventually this failure that we reported in the paper as well. Lastly, in order to show how the system generalized to more cameras, we performed some simulation experiments in which we have cameras placed in front, back, and also on the sides of the road, doing some omni-directional motion in order to show that the system was like able to deal also with this sort of trajectories. To conclude, in this work we presented an active multi-camera virtual teach-and-repeat system that learned these performance models that allow the system to switch between cameras in order to deal with dynamic changes and also to always prioritize a single view to also reduce the computational requirements of the system. We integrate and deploy the system on a real quadruped robot. So as far as we know, this is one of the first demonstrations of visual deterrent system on a quadruped robot in an academic context. And lastly, we also noticed that as future work, so the main challenges are related to the local awareness of the system and also about the perception that should be improved in order to deal with these appearance changes that we reported before. So if you are interested in this work, so we will be presenting some extensions of this work in the 5th Leg Robot Workshop. So basically we're going to be showing some integrations on ANYmal C, that is the next version of the robot that we use in this paper, and how we are integrating local information in order to make the system faster and to deal with some more challenging scenarios in narrow spaces. Thank you so much for your attention, and if you have any further questions, feel free to text me and on this email. Thank you very much.
Great.